everyone, welcome back to our last episode of Midnight Musings. I'm Carly.
I'm Jess.
And I'm Marina.
And I'm Cassandra, and today we're going to be digging deeper into what TikTok is and some new trends we've seen in the past few months and recent years. So just to recap of the past episode, we had Jess have an amazing discussion about the relationship we have seen with food and our bodies, especially in modern times. We have seen the relationship with food and humans literally since history has been, since humans were present, but of course, we have seen now with the implementation of social media, we have seen this trend emerge of how food relates to how we view other people, right? Mm-hmm. The less you eat lettuce, you eat salads, you eat juices, you're slim, you're pretty, but if you eat more, then you're perceived as, not a good individual or not fit. Mm-hmm. So today I just want to dig down deeper on another really common and famous TikTok trend that has been rolling around, which is the clean girl aesthetic. Mm-hmm. So first of all, before I get into the contextualization of the trend, I just want to ask you guys, what does beauty mean to you?
I think that's, obviously I think beauty is internal and, it comes from within. But I think on a real note, I think that external beauty and what we think about is just very hard because it's different for everyone and it's very subjective. And I think that beauty is just I think it's just anything that's visually appealing. But I think that's so horrible because I think that it's very problematic to have so much emphasis over obviously something that nobody can control, and I think it's just something that's a topic that's just so touchy because it's also different for everyone, and a lot of people tie their self-worth to beauty obviously, and so I think it's really interesting because it's something that we have no control over, but something that we put so much emphasis and power with. But
I think beauty is happiness and health. I think if I was going to sum up beauty in a couple of words and what that means to me. I think that as Carly's so adequately summarized, beauty is very, very difficult to define, especially in today's world. Obviously there are more classical interpretations of beauty, based upon historical ideals of what the beautiful woman or beautiful person is. But I think when we think about beauty today, I think of happiness and health and the way in which those two things interplay to make someone beautiful in their own way. And I think beauty is very subjective. It can also be objective as well, which I'm sure you will dig into. But when it comes down to it, beauty to me is just this kind of arbitrary concept that a lot of people find different in different ways.
I think the way that I see beauty is two different ways. It's there's a way that beauty should be, which I think y'all have attested to in terms of this internal view and it being very personal and being happiness and healthiness and whatnot. And then the way that beauty actually ends up being. I think that throughout all of our conversations, the term traditionally beautiful or conventionally attractive has come up. And I think that speaks to the way that you can't really discuss beauty without including the discussion of beauty standards and the way that these celebrities like Emma Watson and Emily Ratajkowski have influenced those standards and influenced the way that people perceive beauty as, even if that's not the way it should be seen.
Exactly, yeah, and I wish beauty was perceived as just that health and happiness, but unfortunately in social media, that is not what it's perceived as, and it's definitely the beauty standards that we talked about. So the clean girl aesthetic essentially arose a few years ago, probably 1 or 2 years ago, and it's very, very prevalent right now, and it's essentially just girls having this very natural, effortless, glowing makeup look that you see on TikTok. So they have very clear skin, they're white, they're blonde, blue eyes, they're using very minimal makeup, lip gloss, blush, glowy highlighter, that they look just so effortlessly pretty.
Is this thing with the French music?
Yes. So I'm sure you guys have been scrolling through your For You page, and then you have this girls going through get readies with me, right? And they just go through their whole routine of hair and makeup and how to attain this beauty look. And especially this is really problematic because it just sets a beauty construct for everyone. And especially for this trend, when we search up clean girl aesthetic, what shows up is just white girls. And this comes up in two main reasons that I think this trend is problematic. One that I'm going to dig into is the beauty construct that it poses, and the second one is the historical link this has with like whiteness, cleanliness, and purity. So digging into like beauty standards at first, we have this research by Naomi. She has like an amazing book on just how beauty standards, as Jess mentioned, have changed over time. What is beautiful and like pretty has changed like throughout generations. What was beautiful today is not what is beautiful like in the past. But in the concept of social media and the clean girl aesthetic, what is beautiful here is just being white, slim, blonde, blue eyes, glowy skin, just that pretty. And Naomi Wolf just digs into like how this is problematic in setting those contemporary beauty constructs, and just how young girls and females are attaining to this, and how this is damaging not only like in society in general, but to self-identity. If you're seeing someone else being popular and being perceived as pretty, then of course you're gonna be like them because they're accepted, they're attractive, people like them. So it's just this problematic trend. And another thing that was really interesting was just seeing the responses in the comments to these videos. So you have girls mentioning on TikTok like, every problem in my life would be resolved if I had clear skin. Like, step one, have clear skin. You know, like this kind of comments are like, you're essentially saying that every problem in your life would be resolved if you had clear skin. So what is this saying of our society in general? That essentially our appearance is dominating. Like, you know what I'm saying? What do you guys think about those comments in particular?
I think that like it's so interesting because like obviously those comments are kind of meant as like a joke in a way, but at the same time like there's obviously a reason why these trends are so popular, or why so many people are watching these Get Ready With Me, why clean girl aesthetic even became a thing, and like why even those people leaving those comments are putting those comments. It's because it's become so like prevalent and like so like important in like how we see ourselves. And so I completely agree with you with what you're saying of how like problematic it is, because if we're putting so much of our self-worth into this one thing and also letting it be dictated by people that we don't even know, like they're just random women on TikTok who are just like showing us their beauty routine, and like a lot of people are eating that up and like trying to replicate that. I think it just like also like speaks to a lot of what you were saying with like the herd nature thing in our last episode, but also just like in general, I just think that it's so problematic to have this trend that is like setting the beauty standard for everyone.
For sure.
Yeah, I just find the whole clean girl aesthetic strange. For someone who analysed TikTok, I do not actually have TikTok myself. So, but I do know what the clean girl aesthetic is, and like Harley Instagram reels. Anyway, I think it's just strange for so many reasons, but I think it's especially strange because it projects this notion of what should be and then what is supposedly attainable for everybody, when in fact the very premise of the clean girl aesthetic is that you first have to meet so many conditions that a very small subset of the population meets to begin with. So in order to be a clean girl, you have to first be white, you then have to have blonde hair, you have to have blue eyes, you then have to have perfect clean skin, you probably have to be rich, you probably have to be privileged in some shape or form, you probably don't have to have a lot of things to worry about in your life outside of your appearance or the way that others perceive you or the way that you perceive yourself, which already limits the scope of this aesthetic to like a very small subset to the population, which is why it's so absurd to me that it has gained so much incredible traction on social media platforms like TikTok. Like how many views or something?
Billion views.
Billions of views. Yeah. So like What I Eat in a Day. Like What I Eat in a Day is like 16 billion. Yeah. This is probably like 6 or 10 billion. It's crazy, right? So people, if you divided that by the whole world, everybody in the world has seen these videos at least once. But of course, as we know with TikTok, the looping videos, the same viewers are watching these over and over again, which is probably even more problematic. Anyway, I just think it's strange, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's just me. I just think it's strange.
I think that this also like sort of brings back the question of like the creator versus viewer dynamic with like not even just agency but like
the active passive distinction.
Sort of in a way. In that like I feel like creators like participate in this trend maybe to like for purposes that are not like for and maybe they don't realize their impact in like participating in a trend that like perpetuates these like structural like isms and structural like bad things, and like viewers also like not being aware of what they're like watching and like the impacts that sort of has, but I wonder like if like creators were aware of, I guess, the like messages that they were spreading, if that would like impact what they're putting out there, or if they're doing it like for themselves and for the purpose of like being able to like self-publish content online that like shows their makeup look.
Yeah. A lot of creators who are doing these videos, especially females, do acknowledge the fact that they are in the trend. So they do have hashtags like clean girl aesthetic or get ready with me or my clean girl aesthetic look in the video. So they are acknowledging of the fact that they are in the trend. And they know that they are white, and they know that they are pretty, and they know that they are blonde. You know, so they're just feeding into this loop of just the creator being part of the problem as well. But then the question is, do you blame the creator because they're blonde, white, and pretty of doing this? So that's just like another like big question.
Well, I mean, maybe there's something more structural at play here.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So maybe it's not just the creator. Maybe it's actually something, a bigger phenomenon that society is kind of, well, we're rooted in as part of society, as part of being embedded within this really complex world that we stem from and go to. You know, there's probably something else actually foundationally playing into this notion of what everybody is trying to like herd towards this trend for. So maybe it's not the creator's fault. I mean, yes, everybody, you know, plays into it. Individual actions don't amount to much, but collectively, they're incredibly consequential.
I'm also curious about why it's called the clean girl aesthetic. Like,
that is actually a great question.
Like, why is it not like just pretty girl or something?
Yeah.
Like, what is like the clean?
That was something really interesting that a lot of people were analyzing, and just it has a lot of historical ties with like whiteness, cleanliness, and purity. So we know from history that white people were seen as the dominant group that people, the others looked up to. And especially in this trend specifically, this is so problematic for people who are non-whites, especially black females. And we go again into this concept that we explored as intersectionality. First of all, you're already at a disadvantage because you're a woman. Now again, you're at a disadvantage again because instead of, you're already a woman and you're black. So you have two layers of problems, which adds another layer of complexity to the trend. So you're women, you're non-white, you don't have this facial features, you don't have this specific straight hair that this white women have, and then you're already black, you know? So that just puts you in a very big disadvantage. And there was this research study actually done on just how like the Eurocentric beauty standards really damage black females' identity. Like if you're seeing that these traits of being like blonde and white and pretty are what is deemed as attractive in our society, then what does this say about the identity of black women? Like, are my features not being like attractive? Am I not attractive enough? Which just impacts a lot of the self-worth. And I think that was really interesting because essentially we live in a modern society where we say we have moved past racism and we have moved past this concept of treating everyone equal, you know? And then we come back to these trends that literally in the name have explicitly said clean, of being white. So what does this mean about society? I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, does that just mean that the clean girl aesthetic is a product of racism, or is the clean girl aesthetic perpetuating racism?
I think both, to be
I mean,
honest.
either way, it's bad.
No, 100%. I don't think this is like getting stuck down in the definitions is at all productive. But I think that in general, having the association of clean on TikTok, where in which the audience is young, impressionable, diverse. TikTok is a very, very diverse audience, as we know. It's got, 2 billion people worldwide using it, so a lot of those demographics are under 25. So young, impressionable, and these people interacting with these trends all the time. And so how is the clean girl aesthetic actually contributing to the perpetuation of further stereotypes and isms within society? And how are these social media platforms like TikTok further contributing to structural tendencies that have kind of held us back as humanity for so long?
I think that what I find really interesting about trends and hashtags clean girl aesthetic is that users choose to sort of define that as their own, right? Like someone way long ago thought that filmed a video of them putting on a very basic makeup look, probably had all of the qualifying features of people who are in this trend, and chose to caption it hashtag clean girl aesthetic. And I think that the sort of line of dominoes in which more and more creators picked up on that and continue to use this hashtag really speak to, I guess, the subtle ways that things like racism, which people collectively say that we're done with, or we're not racist anymore, still sort of like exacerbate these like underlying like racist structures in ways that aren't like super explicit but still are very damaging and have all of these implications. And I think that like as much as like creators are not like play that much of an active role, they still are part of a trend that is very damaging towards non-white women and do perpetuate these like structural like inequalities in ways that.
And I do agree with a lot. I really like the word you use, the domino effect, because I feel like TikTok does have that effect of, you know, a trend becomes popular, then like girls follow this trend, and then this damages their reputation, and then this follows on like a positive feedback loop, but it just worsens.
Right, exactly. Well, but it's through the popularity that these creators are given qualification or authority, right?
Yeah.
And then because one creator has authority or qualification, the viewers who can then kind of come out of their passive role to become the active creators, even momentarily, they can create these trends and kind of further perpetuate it themselves.
Yeah.
And so TikTok enables this ridiculous domino.
Yeah. And I think like even the popularity in and of itself is like just like attached to like how there is like this underlying racism like even in our society, like that people are interested in this and that people want to look like this is also like just like shows how prevalent it is. And like even if you want to say that it's done with, like it's not just like the creators that are doing that, it's like the viewers who are feeding into it and the viewers that want to watch that because of this like beauty standard that's been set, because they want to emulate that as well.
Yeah, and I feel like the trend itself, like throughout the years, we have seen social media has a big impact in reform and change and like actually like inclusivity and including like Black women in society and making them more equal, right? And we can see this especially with the clean girl aesthetic, with the introduction of like Fenty Beauty, which was one of the first makeup brands which introduced like over 40 foundation shades. So we do see the impact, the positive impact social media has on like inclusivity of like non-white women and just giving them a voice. However, just having trends of the clean girl aesthetic circulating is just a step in the wrong direction, you know?
Yeah.
And then it's just, I don't know, it's just interesting because these trends are going to continue. It's not like it's going to become one day and we're going to say we're done with this trend. Nothing is going to circulate anymore. Nothing is going to become popularity. So today might be the clean girl aesthetic, but what's going to be next?
Exactly. I think you can think about social media, I think kind of, I mean, maybe this is literally because it's midnight, I'm getting wacky and wackier. But, you know, honestly, I think you can think about social media with all of the, you know, intersectionality, diversity, kind of beautiful ideas that people are coming up with and ways to represent themselves, like, is essential, right? A lot of people like to talk about that being the pinnacle of social media. That's amazing. But then quite literally, like looping around, feeding back over everything in social media and like this endless domino effect in which we have trends, looping videos, you know, incessantly trying to break this cycle, break out of, you know, perpetuation of beauty standards and norms, errata and things like that. That's all circling around the outside. And no matter what you do, we're always stuck in this loop of like having these, you know, amazing kind of attributes of social media stuck in the middle of what is inherently just going to continue going. And I think, as you said, like where to next, right? So we've covered so much in this conversation, but like what do trends like the clean girl aesthetic imply for the perpetuation of like isms in society, or like further structural things that perhaps we wanted to leave in the past?
It just, in my opinion, it just means that we always come back to those fundamental ideas we had since the beginning and in history. The things like racism, we're still coming back to that, and we're in modern society, we're in the 21st century. Why are we coming back to the concept of racism? It just shows there's no progress in our society in inclusivity, inequality, and beauty standards. And it just poses a question of, is this ever going to end? You know, and in my opinion, I don't think it's going to end. Like, people are not going to say, oh, I'm just not going to look at this person and think she's pretty, or no, I'm not going to hop on this trend because I want to gain followers. It's not going to end, so it just poses a question for all of us, what is the real impact of social media? And I feel like
that's a very cynical and but I think that like we're trying to do here, I feel like social media can have like positive impact. And I think that, you know, to anything there's like two sides, and there's like obviously bad and good. But yeah, I think that was a very interesting take on this.
And I think we're gonna jump into that in our final wrap up episode.
Stay tuned.